This message comes from Stars. The global phenomenon Outlander returns for its final farewell. Claire and Jamie's story comes to an unforgettable end. Don't miss the final season of Outlander. Watch now, only on Stars.
We need group-centered leadership. We need people-centered leadership. And I think that's a much harder effort to thwart than it is when you just have one individual who has to represent all interests of all people.
Another civil rights legend has gone home to glory. I am talking about none other than the Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr.
Our flag is red, white, and blue, but our nation is rainbow. Red, yellow, brown, black, and white, we're all precious in God's sight.
That's Jackson speaking to the Democratic National Convention in 1984, the year of his first run for presidency. He championed the idea of a rainbow coalition, people of all backgrounds working together to achieve a common goal long before it was popular.
And come November, there will be a change because our time has come. Thank you and God bless you.
Jesse Jackson's runs for the American presidency in 1984 and 1988 paved the way for future Black leaders, like former President Barack Obama. Jackson represents a vanguard of old-school civil rights leadership, the generation that desegregated America. But is that style of singular male leadership becoming a thing of the past? I'm here with Dr. Marcus Lee.
I'm an assistant professor of African American Studies at Princeton University.
And Dr. Kelly Carter Jackson.
I am the chair of Africana Studies at Wellesley College.
To find out. Marcus, Kelly, welcome to It's Been a Minute.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Couldn't think of two better people to have this conversation with. Hello, hello. I'm Brittany Luce, and you're listening to It's Been a Minute from NPR, a show about what's going on in culture and why it doesn't happen by accident. You know, when it comes to the civil rights tradition, there is a look and a feel and a sound to leadership that's very familiar. It's patriarchal, it's inspiring, it's coded as very masculine, kind of like Jesse Jackson, you know, this larger-than-life figure that we're discussing. How do each of you remember Jesse Jackson, from your earlier memories of him as a public figure to now soon after his passing? Marcus, we'll start with you.
Whenever I think of Jesse Jackson, I think about the conundrums and questions that shaped Black political life between the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the election of Barack Obama. And in many ways, Jesse Jackson is central to that history. Jesse Jackson represented what we might call the new Black politics. That is, the sort of transition from protest to politics in the aftermath of the Civil Rights Movement. The thing that always sticks out to me is his 1972 speech at the Gary, Indiana National Black Political Convention.
Brothers and sisters, this is a beautiful occasion.
Wherein Jesse Jackson sort of announced that Black people were a new colossus in world history, and he likened Black politics to a baby.
We are pregnant. We are ready for change. And whether a doctor is there or not, the water has broke, the blood has spilled, a new Black baby is going to be born.
That baby was Black politics. So I think about Jesse Jackson's oratory, and I think about what he represented for so many in that transitional period of American history.
That's such an interesting reframe right there. Many people probably felt like it had been hundreds of years of collective struggle to reframe back Black politics as something that's in its infancy, really. It feels like a moment of, I mean, pardon my pun, but like a moment of rebirth, rejuvenation, reminding people and maybe almost inspiring people like we are at the beginning of a great journey.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Every time I think about Jesse Jackson, it just makes me smile because I just remember as a kid how much respect and love that my parents had for him. I remember like watching clips of him on Sesame Street and having these kids respond to this mantra of I am somebody.
I may be small, but I am. Somebody. Give yourself a big hand.
Yeah.
The love and affirmation that he just had for Black identity was boundless. I also, on a personal note, just remember how much he was doing the Lord's work in prison ministries. I mean, many people may have forgotten now that his son was once incarcerated.
Right. He had used $750,000 in campaign funds for personal use, and he did time for that.
He was incarcerated along the same time and in the same prison as my brother. And so when I would go to do these visits, seeing Jesse Jackson there, like, whoa, he's here. And he wasn't just making space for his son, but also for everyone in that incarcerated community. He was encouraging the families in the same way of consistency, of keep hope alive for people whose family members may have been facing life sentences or really long sentences. And there were no cameras there. There was no PR crew there who was sort of watching him do what he did.
Yeah.
He did that because he absolutely cared.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of that archetype? And how did Jesse Jackson adopt it or reject it?
Ooh, that's a good question.
We got the size here. Okay. Y'all, you have to cook.
I mean, I think in many ways, Jesse Jackson was very interested in living into this archetype. This is an archetype of a charismatic Black male leader. And what that archetype does, especially for ordinary Black people, is sort of signal that change is coming, right? Because of the repetition of this archetype over time, you get this sort of feeling that if there's this singular male figure who stands in front of crowds and rouses them and electrifies them, that somehow political change is possible, that it's on the horizon. In many ways, Jesse Jackson sort of stood in as that symbol for Black communities, especially in the 1980s with his 2 campaigns for president. So many Black people registered to vote for the very first time in order to vote for Jesse Jackson. Right? So there was something special about what he did just on a symbolic level for ordinary people to force them to think about power in a different sort of way.
And there's also, I think about it, there's also something very like messianic, biblical. I'm not saying that's necessarily something that all of these men are bringing upon themselves. Some of them might want to now, but we're not going to have to get that today. Yeah. But like, I mean, it's as old and reoccurring as Jesus or as Lisa Nagaib, like Dune.
Yeah.
Like, this idea of like the one.
Yes, we've been waiting for you.
We've been waiting for you. It's such a good way to put it, Marcus. It's that one person can, for better or worse, be a signal that change is coming or change is possible. But I will say, as that legacy is so huge in the wake of Jesse Jackson's passing, and honestly, even before that, and other times where we've seen other civil rights legends lost in the past, people are feeling like, you know, another one of our civil rights giants has passed on, and there's no one left that can fill those shoes. As in one person, one man specifically, who can be a spokesperson for the advancement of social justice movements. Do we need that kind of leadership? Like, do we need that kind of leadership? Okay, Kelly is giving a quick no. Okay, say more.
We have been doing the same thing over and over again, which is selecting that one great Black man, the Moses that will lead us out of the wilderness into the promised land.
Bible reference.
And it has not worked out well for us. When we put all of our eggs in the sort of one great man basket, they are often assassinated, as we've seen with King, as we've seen with Malcolm X, as we've seen with Medgar Evers. They are deeply marginalized in ways that don't allow them to actually affect change. And I think that we got to move away from that model. And I think Ella Baker talked about this best. We need group-centered leadership. We need people-centered leadership. And I think that's a much harder effort to thwart than it is when you just have one individual who has to represent all interests of all people.
I see you nodding. I see you nodding very deliberately, Marcus. Please share.
I so agree. I mean, you know, when politics relies on one individual, one leader to sort of lead a group of people into a promised land, you not only put all your eggs in one basket. I would say that you also create a situation in which there's a single point of failure, right? So if something happens to that one leader, as Kelly is pointing to, the question becomes, what happens to the people? And so, one of the fundamental challenges of politics is always political inducement. That is, how can I get you to move outside of your day-to-day life and to do something for the greater good? If that inducement relies on the charisma of a single person, the excitement of seeing Jesse Jackson, then that means that there is too much dependency on this external force, right, that is inducing you or pulling you out of your day-to-day life. So what I'm interested in is not for a new Black man to take up Jesse Jackson's mantle. I'm interested in a larger network, set of organizations that encourage people to move beyond their everyday lives and to ask questions about the greater good.
Coming up,
celebrity corrupts the cause. I think celebrity absolutely corrupts the cause, that it is hard to talk about capitalism when you walk in with your Gucci bag.
Stay with us.
This message comes from Intuit TurboTax. With TurboTax Expert Full Service, match with a dedicated expert who will do your taxes for you from start to finish, getting you every dollar you deserve. It's that easy. Visit TurboTax.com to match with an expert today. This message comes from Amazon Business. How can you grow your business from idea to industry leader? Bring your vision to life with smart business buying tools and technology from Amazon Business. From fast, free shipping to in-depth buying insights and automated purchase approvals, they deliver everything you need to achieve your goals. It's not easy to stand out from the crowd. Simplify how you stock up to get ahead. Go to AmazonBusiness.com for support.
This message comes from ADP. ADP knows any new technology, any old competitor, any trendy thing, even a trendy thing that everyone knows isn't a great idea, but management just wants us to give it a try for a bit, can change the world of work. So whether it's a last-minute policy change or adding a new company holiday, ADP designs forward-thinking solutions to help businesses take on the next anything. ADP, always designing for people.
This message comes from eBay. The worst part about loving cars might just be buying them and all the parts. From Toyotas to Aston Martins, eBay has thousands of cars and the largest online selection of vehicle parts and accessories. eBay, things people love.
I appreciate what each of you are saying, and I think that there's a lot there. But, we also live in the world, right? And these days there are high-profile organizers, content creators, pastors, and even elected officials who liken themselves or wish to liken themselves to the leaders of the past, even without the credentials or the strategy that are necessary to organize
especially
around
without the
issues.
credentials.
We gotta listen. We've talked on this show before. Across the board, all demographics, all topics. We're struggling with credentials these days. But, also, technology and social media have made it such that anyone can have a voice and a platform. How is that factoring into all this?
I will say this. I feel like social media has really democratized people's ability to have a mic, to have amplification, to be able to voice their concerns or their grievances. And I think that's a good thing, that, we need a multitude of voices and perspectives and opinions and what have you. I do think, though, that in some ways, too many people have a mic.
Oh,
too many people.
Don't I know it?
Too many people have amplification without information. And so a lot of the things that I'm hearing are somewhat problematic because it's either misinformation or disinformation. It's really easy for a lot of people to either get co-opted or to sort of take these, financial incentives about getting clicks and likes and retweets and not really doing anything beyond that.
Yeah. A lot of what you're talking about brings to mind some of those social media videos I've seen, even of just Black men in suits just walking, like they just show up places and they're like, this is symbolic. And I'm thinking like, symbolic of what?
Symbolic of what?
Symbolic of what? You know?
You look nice. Moving on.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. And listen, I don't see how this reconnects to the civil rights movement, or social justice more broadly, but Marcus, yeah, please jump in.
Sure. I mean, the thing that is often missing with the emergence of these leaders on social media is a proper structure of accountability. You know, to speak on behalf of a population or a community that you don't know, that hasn't chosen you, that hasn't elected you to represent them, that becomes really problematic. You know, so if I pick up a mic and I get on TikTok and I say, listen, like I know what Kelly wants, I know what Brittany wants. They want the thing that I want, just trust me. And the two of you don't know who I actually am. You might look to me and say, wait a minute, dude, like this isn't how that works. Like, you know, I have my own ideas. And so I think the challenge of social media is that it's not clear who speakers are actually accountable to when they speak.
That's such an important point.
Yes. Celebrity corrupts the cause. I think celebrity absolutely corrupts the cause, that it is hard to talk about capitalism when you walk in with your Gucci bag and your Louis Vuitton shoes and there's nothing wrong with wearing labels or anything with that matter. But I do think that there was something, at least about the vanguard, that was much more humble and sort of modest in the way that they approached the movement. You know, I would be gobsmacked to see like MLK and like, you know, I don't know, the Fendi blazer, you know, like I don't.
Yes, you are referencing the sometimes outrageously expensive outfits we've seen some mega church leaders wear both in and out of the pulpit. But speaking of the pulpit, I think it's really important to acknowledge the role of the Black church in Jesse Jackson's journey. I mean, it's an institution that supported his growth as a leader throughout his entire life. But it's also an institution that through its own misogyny and homophobia has driven out many of the same people that Jesse Jackson himself was trying to call in with this idea of the Rainbow Coalition.
Yeah, I think that part of what we're witnessing today is the waning influence of the Black church. And along with that, the sort of waning influence of this notion of a charismatic Black male figure. I don't know that archetype still has the same currency that it once had. I'm not sure that young people, especially, actually find that sort of archetype inspiring in the ways that older generations of Black folks have. And I think that has a lot to do with the status of Black churches. So I think it's an imbrication of both of those things. Yeah.
Now, I want to touch on something that you have brought up, Marcus, about younger generations not necessarily maybe being inspired by that sort of like singular male person, right? Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that there are now and have always been plenty of Black women leading their various communities since pre-civil rights, but also, you know, you have Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker and Shirley Chisholm. Like there are so many Black women who have been in and outside the church, you know, in and outside of electoral politics, who have been in the streets, on the front lines, organizing people, and have been leaders, very visible leaders in their communities. But I'll say, when I think about many of the most prominent social justice voices of the 2010s and 2020s, to me, have been Black people within the queer community, and have a lot of times been femmes, trans women, like people who the church more broadly has not necessarily embraced. But there are credentialed, respected people out there visibly doing this kind of organizing work, but they don't fit that narrow, very narrow and exclusionary idea of who a leader is or how they look. And we see that show up within the church, and we see that show up outside of it.
Yeah. I think that's so right. I mean, you know, and the thing that I would say about younger generations and why they might not be as seduced by this notion of a charismatic Black male figure is that, you know, they grew up in a world where Barack Obama was already president. So the novelty of a Black...
Sorry, you just made me realize. I'm like, okay, I'm approaching elder status. I'm approaching elder status because I remember the before times, but okay.
But the novelty of a Black man in power had already waned. There was already a Black man who had reached the pinnacle of political power, in some cases, for some young people, by the time they were born, right?
Yeah, right. And also, too, like for people who are, I imagine, coming of age
Yeah.
in a post-Obama world, there are, as we know, plenty of people who are maybe because they didn't have that novel idea of Obama becoming presidency as like in the back of their head.
Yeah.
They're looking at some of the aftermath of the policies and they're like, okay,
Yeah.
what is this?
Right.
Yeah.
What's going on? What were
Right.
you doing?
Really?
Yeah. And some of the protests that would become the basis for the movement for Black Lives emerged not under Trump, but under Obama, with, young Black people really calling into question, for example, the response to the killing of Trayvon Martin in Florida, right? Obama was president during that time. And so you will continue to have generations of young Black people for whom this notion of a Black person wielding power publicly is not novel. It's pretty standard. And in some cases, it might be even considered disappointing. And so it's not as seductive as it may have been for, let's say, a young Black person in 1984 wanting to vote for Jesse Jackson to see him in power.
You know, regardless of whether we think people should look to social justice leaders to tell them how to be and what to do, the public is going to do it anyway. What do you think that urge is speaking to? Is there somewhere people can redirect that energy? Marcus, you ready? You got someone tip of your tongue.
I think that urge is partly speaking to just the repetition of having many leaders over time serve as external motivators for us. I think the only way to get around this notion of leadership, or this fixation, I would say, on race leadership, is to encourage ordinary people that they have what they need in their everyday lives to transform their own experiences. They don't have to wait for a savior to do it. Part of it is that we have to encourage everyday people that their sort of own passions can drive them, and that they don't have to wait for me, for Kelly, for Brittany, or anyone else to tell them.
I co-sign everything Marcus is saying. I mean, I absolutely think that part of the problem too is that people need to be thinking more at the local level and instead of at the national or global level. I think people think the only way they can make change is if they start at the very top. And, that if I'm not a U.S. senator, or if I'm not with 10 million followers, that I can't do what needs to be done. And, it's Tip O'Neill who said all politics are local. And I'm 100% in agreement with that. Like, there are things that we can do in our own backyard, in our front yard, that are meaningful to us, that can bring about change, whether it's serving on the, your school board, or whether it's, running for local town office, or whether it's coming up with some sort of food bank within your own neighborhood. I mean, there are things that people can do at the very local ground level that can actually have transformative change. But for so long, I think we have been unwilling to accept change that does not feel dramatic and change that does not feel fancy to us. If you can do something at a small local level and chip away at someone else's oppression, even if it feels minor, that to me is meaningful to me. And I will take that all day, any day, over the facade or a false promise of some big major platform that never achieves anything.
Oh my gosh. Well, Kelly, Marcus, thank you both so much. I desperately needed this conversation. This was very sustaining. Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
That was Dr. Marcus Lee, Assistant Professor of African American Studies at Princeton University, and Dr. Kelly Carter Jackson, the Chair of Africana Studies at Wellesley College. This episode of It's Been a Minute was produced by
Corey Antonio Rose.
This episode was edited by
Nina Patak.
Our supervising producer is
Barton Girdwood.
Our VP of programming is
Yolanda Sanguini.
All right, that's all for this episode of It's Been a Minute from NPR. I'm Brittany Luce. Talk soon.
Support for NPR and the following message come from Spectrum Business, with connectivity solutions to help your business stay online and on track. Reliable connections, responsive support, and tailored solutions. Spectrum.com/business. Restrictions apply. Services not available in all areas.
This message comes from Rosetta Stone. Spring travel coming up? Rosetta Stone has been the trusted leader in language learning for over 30 years. Ready to start learning a new language this spring? Visit rosettastone.com/NPR today.
This message comes from Charles Schwab with their original podcast, Choiceology. Choiceology is a show about the psychology and economics behind people's decisions. Download the latest episode and subscribe at schwab.com/podcast.